Well, hey, listen, I think we'll get started. I'm going to mute everybody. So as we have new folks join us, please know that everybody's muted just so we can keep the project moving along. My name is Kelly Crockett. I am the executive director of the Aidan Project. We're thrilled to have you with us this evening. We're going to be featuring Tyler Davidson, who is a certified financial planner and has special expertise in helping families who have family members with disabilities. And I feel like we're really lucky to have him join our community. Before we get started, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what the Aidan Project is and what we do. We exist because families need support when they're trying to find what are the right supports for their family and their child with developmental delays. 1 in 6 children have a developmental delay. 22% of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities are served by state agencies, which means there's another 78% who are not. And in Kansas City, only about half of the children who have been designated with a developmental delay will qualify for state funded support. And so our role at the Aidan Project is really to act as an ecosystem builder. So we really help to connect families with all the resources, all the early interventions, and then contacts to the different providers to make this maze a little bit more traversable for all of us. We work with with 4 program pillars, which you can see here. Tonight's program really focuses in on those middle 2 pillars of family navigation and community building. What we really want to do here is be able to help families navigate complicated processes of supporting their child with a developmental disability or delay. What I'm really excited to tell you about is one of the things that will happen mid-year for us. We received a sizable gift from a family foundation here in town, and with those funds, we'll be hiring our first family navigator. So we will have a full-time social worker who works for the Aidan Project and can support families just trying to figure out how to do this. By signing up tonight, you're on our mailing list. So as soon as we have navigation supports in place, you'll be the first to know. That combines with our existing family roadmap, which you can access on our website, the aidanprojectkc.org. And between this roadmap and our navigator, we're going to be able to really help demystify a lot of the planning processes that families need for kiddos with disabilities. Our second pillar that we're talking about tonight is community building. I myself have 3 children who are neurodivergent, including 1 son with autism. So I know firsthand how isolating it can be to have children that need specialized supports. And we're really interested in helping to build the community between all of our families because we need that support and guidance and care teams to help us as we navigate this path for our families. We also have a strong emphasis on elevating the expertise of lived experience from our families and our scholarship recipients. And so we're excited to offer many different programs, not the least of which is tonight's speaker series. This is our first speaker series of the year. We'll have 3 additional ones. And again, because you have signed up for this one, you'll get everything else as well. My contact information is right here. I'll tell you a little bit more housekeeping in just a second, but you're going to get a link to a recording of this. So you'll be able to access not only the information that I have provided for the Aidan Project, but also information, of course, that Tyler will be sharing with us shortly. I also wanted to let you know our next speaker series is going to be in June. This is our speaker for that session. Speaking of playabilities, Philip, yes, Chloe will be our speaker, and we're really talking about the specialized opportunities that exist within play-based therapy. Whether you have a child who is in therapy or not, whether you are curious or have friends or family members who may be curious about what the benefits are, this is going to be a great session. So a couple of housekeepings. I'm going to keep all of us on mute as Tyler is presenting, but please use the chat function to list any questions, and then we'll hold those till the end of the session, and I'll help moderate those questions out of the chat. Also, as I mentioned earlier, you will be receiving a recording of this session. We're going to have a whole catalog of all of our speaker series sessions on our YouTube channel that'll be linked through the Aidan Project website. So without further ado, let me introduce Tyler. Tyler Davidson is a certified financial planner who has gone above and beyond to also get extra certifications specifically in supporting families with family members who have a disability. As we all know, that adds extra complexity to your financial and legal planning within your family. And we're really lucky to have Tyler with us tonight to share his expertise. Tyler, take it away, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. So, well, just real quick, thanks again for having me here. I'm super excited to be part of the speaker series and the first speaker in the speaker series. So it's quite the honor. So let's just go ahead and dive right into it. So, Kelly, can you confirm everything's looking good? Okay, sweet. So just a quick introduction. Again, Kelly kind of covered it, but my name Tyler Davidson. I'm a certified financial planner and a CHSNC, stands for Chartered Special Needs Consultant. So been an advisor since 2010. Been with Cornerstone for most of that time, and uh, big picture, we're a wealth management, group benefits, commercial insurance, and surety bond firm. So basically do all lines of coverage that's out there for families and companies. So my journey is a little bit different than what Cornerstone does. Cornerstone works a lot with businesses, but my journey is more with the individual side and more with families that have a loved one with a disability or the individual themselves has a disability. So, a little backstory. My brother-in-law, Ryan, is the one pictured here. Me and my wife, Courtney, are the successor guardians for him whenever her parents one day pass away. And Ryan was born with Prader-Willi syndrome. So it's an intellectual disability, but also it's a mutation of the 15th chromosome. And he doesn't have that part of his brain or his body doesn't react to food like it does for you and I. So he is constantly hungry. So it's really hands-on, not just from the IDD perspective, but also just being careful that he doesn't overeat and everything like that. So he's also a KU fan, and over 10 years, I finally got him to wear an MU shirt and MU hat. So I love this picture for that reason. So, but yeah, so how we help comprehensive financial planning, as you work with families that have a loved one with a disability. It's a little bit different with financial planning because you're not just trying to get someone to and through retirement. You're also planning for that next generation. And there's a lot of considerations that go into that. So being well equipped to have those conversations and also have the care team, as Kelly and I were talking about earlier, the care team in place to have those conversations. It's impossible to know everything about every little avenue that you can go down. So having that care team is important. Okay, so that's all the various ways that we can help. So the purpose of today's presentation, I want to introduce some of the standard documents or accounts you need and also the unique accounts and documents that you may need. I want to highlight the planning timeline and kind of the stages, the various stages, and then I want to do a deep dive into ABLE accounts. I've often talked with families that they say, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of that," because they are fairly new. They're about 10 years old, but they don't necessarily know the ins and outs of it. So I want to kind of introduce that today, and then answer any questions that you guys have. All right, so as you can imagine, this is not a one size fits all. Some of the things I talk about today may apply to your situation, it may not apply. And again, that's where working with professionals that specialize in this, they will kind of help steer the conversation in a way where you are comfortable with how you want to set everything up. So don't feel like you have to have all the answers after listening in. That's where the team comes in. So let's start with legal planning. So your traditional estate plan documents are all listed here. So the living will, that outlines the wishes for end of life care. So this is a will that applies while you're still alive. right? So if we think back to COVID, if we haven't blacked that out of our memory just yet, when people were on ventilators, right? Obviously unable to speak. That's where a living will would come in, where it explains what kind of care they would want while they're incapacitated. Okay. So, very important document. Along with that will come the healthcare power of attorney. So, the healthcare power of attorney will use the living will and kind of step into your role, into your shoes, and make those healthcare decisions while you're incapacitated. So there's the healthcare side, and then there's the finance side. So the financial or durable power of attorney, that's who steps in to manage your finances and property while you're incapacitated. Okay, so you'll have two different relationships. Usually they're two different people. Usually you want the person that's most caring, that's who you want handling your health care, right? And then you want the numbers person handling the finances. That's kind of how it works. But usually it's two different roles. Okay. Now, when you pass away, all those three documents I just talked about go away. Okay. They no longer apply because you are no longer living. At that point, that's when the last will and testament steps in. Okay, so that's what usually people think of when they think of will. So the last will and testament basically directs the probate court on how you want everything handled, okay, and how you want to give everything up. You also appoint an executor in your last will and testament, so that's going to be who's in charge of handling all this, right? So usually it's a family member, sometimes it's a professional. It just really depends on your own personal situation. Okay. Um, Now, again, the last will and testament assists the probate court. It does not avoid probate. And I get that question a lot, So I'll talk with someone and they said, "Oh, well, I got my will set up, so we're all set." That's not necessarily the case, right? So if you were to pass away with just the will, you're going to go through probate. That usually takes 6 months to a year and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the estate, right? It's also public, and it just really drags it on. So for that reason, you really want to avoid probate. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. One of them's not listed here, but it's having your accounts listed as payable on death or transferable on death. So you'll see POD, that's for bank accounts, that's the payable on death, and then TOD, transferable on death. That would be for like property or brokerage accounts, so non-retirement accounts. Uh, that naturally will avoid probate. Okay. Now, past that, you may want to set up a revocable trust. A revocable trust avoids probate and allows you to control from the grave a little bit and protect from future risks that may come up. For example, if you were to leave your account's behind to a son or daughter and they were married and then after you were gone they got divorced, if it's outside the trust your assets may be split, and that's probably not what you want to have happen. You probably want it to stay with your son or daughter. So a revocable trust makes a lot of sense in most cases, but if you just want to get the basic setup, you can do that with TOD or POD. But talking with an attorney will definitely steer you in the right way of what you need. And if you need an attorney to talk to, I got a whole care team that I can give you. So that those are your typical documents when setting up an estate plan. All right. Now, additional unique documents that you may need to consider are all listed here. So guardianship, conservatorship. Guardianship is legal decision-making authority for personal and medical decisions. Okay, so it may make sense in some situations where someone is unable to make their own decisions based on their own care and everything. That's where a guardianship will step in. Conservatorship is someone is unable to take care of their finances. Okay. So if you remember, probably what, 5, 6 years ago, Britney Spears, the Free Britney movement, that was all part of this. Her dad had conservatorship, and yeah, it wasn't a good situation. And you saw it is a very difficult, long, and expensive process to, once you have conservatorship or guardianship, to then remove that. Okay, so you really want to be careful that if you want to go down this route, that it makes the most sense. Sometimes it's cut and dry. Sometimes, obviously, it's guardianship needs to be, put in place. But oftentimes families just don't know yet, right? Especially if they're young children and we really don't know how they're going to age and what it's going to look like once they're past 18 and all that. That's really where you want to probably sit down with an attorney and really talk through this. Because with guardianship, especially, you are essentially saying they are unable to make decisions on their own from here on out, right? So that's a big step. So just make sure that if you were to go down that route, make sure you kind of talk through it. So you're now seeing a shift to more supportive decision-making agreements. And what that means is basically you are appointed as a trusted person to help in important decisions. So, when you bowl and you have those bumper lanes, right? It's kind of like that. So you make sure that the ball doesn't go in the gutter, right? You keep it in the straight and narrow, but you still allow the flexibility of the individual to go up and bowl, right? They can bowl to the left, to the right, they can bounce it around. It's completely up to them. You are just helping to make sure that it's in the best decision for them. So you're definitely seeing a shift more to that, and then attach power of attorneys with that. So financial and healthcare power of attorneys, if that's at all possible, that is a great thing to set up. Okay. Next, you have representative payee. So if your child is one day receiving SSI or SSDI, they can appoint you to actually be the one managing those funds. So again, you're not doing conservatorship where you completely strip them of their financial decision-making powers. You are just kind of managing the income that's coming in. So that kind of pairs with that supported decision making. And same with the HIPAA release form. The HIPAA release form, if you want to know what's going on medically, but you still want to allow them the flexibility to go to the doctor themselves and have the private conversations, that's doable. So all things that you might need to consider, and that's where an attorney would come in. Next, letter of intent. So this is not a legal document, but Kelly, I was going to send this to you. This is a document that if you were to pass away or you and your spouse were to pass away, how would you how would someone step into your shoes, right? It's impossible to fill your shoes. But if you could leave behind like a how-to guide, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays they do this, or when he's eating such and such food, he has to have it on this plate or this bowl. All those little nuances that that the next person that steps in should know. And I would also add to it, if you're at a point where you have your successor guardian set up, like exactly who that's going to be, have them involved in their day-to-day life. Like that's what Courtney and me are with Ryan. Courtney's always involved with Ryan, but for me, it's going to all of his events, right? So he had a talent show on Friday. I went to that, so it's just the more you can get someone involved and get used to it, it just makes it that much easier one day when that comes. Okay, so that would be a recommendation. But letter of intent, really easy document to put together. I also have it on a PDF that's fillable, so super easy to just save it. Once a year, you often hear about on their birthday, If you want to do that, you can. That doesn't really sound like a fun birthday event, but you can. But you can go in and update it just for things that have changed. So medications or um, anything that they have going on, you can update it. And then lastly, special needs trust. So I get this question a lot. Do I need a special needs trust? It really just kind of depends. Special needs trust is there to help protect resource-based benefits. Okay, so like your SSI, your Medicaid, where you have to have less than $2,000 of assets to qualify. All right. So by having a special needs trust, that is removed as a resource, quote unquote resource. And there's three different types. There's the first party special needs trust, third party, and then pooled. So first party special needs trust, that is the individual's assets only. So think of someone that was maybe in an accident, right? And they were part of a lawsuit and they got a big, lump sum of money. Well, if they need to be on Medicaid and they just received, let's say, 250,000 for their lawsuit, well, they're not going to qualify because they now have more than $2,000 of assets. So that's where a first party special needs trust can come in, where they can put those funds in that trust and have it removed as a countable resource. Okay. Now, the more the trust that I see more often is the third party special needs trust. So this is third party assets. So this would be like mom and dad leaving assets behind to their child, or a grandparent or a relative leaving assets behind. So this is for assets that are not the child's. Okay. And the big thing with this one is there's no Medicaid payback. So I'll touch on it with ABLE accounts too. But with first party special needs trusts, if the child were to pass away and there's still assets in the trust, Medicaid is going to try to claw back or be reimbursed for what was spent throughout that child's life. Okay. Third party special needs trust, they don't have that clawback. So that's another great reason to have a third party special needs trust, is because you never have to worry about the state trying to recoup assets. Okay. Now, pooled trust, that can be a first party or a third party special needs trust. But basically, a pooled trust is ran by a non-for-profit organization that pools assets together. The individual still has their own account, their own trust, but it's all pooled together for resources. And then once the individual passes away, if there's still some assets left in it, the nonprofit organization takes a portion of that to help fund the organization. So this is typically better for estates that are maybe less than 100,000 of assets. So if you, let's say, someone only has like 25,000 to leave behind, well, that's going to be a super expensive third party trust. So instead, you could do a pooled trust, a lot less expensive. Yes, the non-for-profit's going to take a portion of that if the child passes away with assets still left in it, but it's worth it just to make sure it doesn't mess up your child's SSI or Medicaid. Okay, so that's where a pooled trust comes in. All right. Hopefully, I haven't lost anyone. Financial planning. All right. So I love this timeline. It does a great job comparing what a quote unquote traditional timeline, how it compares to a special needs planning timeline. So as you can see, the early intervention, the IEPs, the transition planning, guardianship at 18, right? So I hear it all the time where someone assumes I'm the parent of the child. I am clearly their guardian. They can't make decisions. Well, at 18, that stops, right? And the child can make his or her own decisions. So if guardianship makes sense, that's when you need to, start that whole process, or actually probably even a little bit before 18. So I love this timeline just because I think it's obviously a very complex situation, but it does a very good job, I think, of simplifying it into bite-sized chunks so you know what to focus on. And then this is the hierarchy of financial planning. So cash flow, your daily needs, kind of your budgets, that's going to be your bottom. Financial security. So do you have an emergency fund? Are you properly insured? Like, do you have health insurance? Do you have life insurance? All that stuff is also still at the bottom. I would say the difference between planning for families that have someone with unique abilities is that the estate plan being at the top, I think that's got to be down at the bottom. I think you really got to sit down and make sure you have your estate plan set up and you have everything taken care of. And look, you're probably going to have to go back and revisit it and change it because again, what you think your child's life today is going to be like may be drastically different 10 years from now. Again, we just don't know sometimes. But I still think that needs to be more towards the bottom. And then as time goes on, retirement planning, long-term care, all those concerns that kind of fills up the top. So with financial planning, obviously I could do a 45-minute conversation just on financial planning because that's what I do for a living. But to simplify it, the one thing I would urge you guys to look for in a financial planner is someone who takes a comprehensive approach. Okay, so someone who's maybe a CFP, certified financial planner. So someone that knows not just the investment side, but also the estate planning side, insurance, tax, and really has studied on how to put that all together. That is extremely important. And then also the CHSNC, I think, is also extremely important. If you need someone that knows this world, you got to go with someone that has a CHSNC because most advisors, they just don't know it, right? Because with Medicaid SSI, you have to have less than $2,000 of resources, and it's a whole different world to understand. So there are multiple, well, probably about 10 different CHSNCs in Missouri and Kansas. I want to say there's about five here in Kansas City. All of them, I think, would do a really good job for you. But, the financial planning piece, someone that can put it all together, I think that's really the most important piece. But some additional unique considerations, housing and care cost projections. So there are firms out there that, if you're really unsure of what the housing situation is going to be like once you're gone, there are organizations that can help project that out. So it kind of gives you an understanding and really a bullseye of what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to have a group home? Are we trying to have independent living? What does this kind of look like, and what does it cost? So there are companies that do that. Uh, at age 18, I talked about a little bit with guardianship, but that age 18 is a huge, huge time because also family assets no longer count towards the resource limit. So your child may qualify for SSI and Medicaid based on their own assets at that time. So another thing to keep in mind. And then Social Security DAC benefits. So this is disabled adult child benefits. And what you may need to think about, again, this, if you're younger, this is probably 30 years down the road. So things may change. But, for people retiring now, the conversation is, okay, if my child can get half of my benefit today, if I go ahead and file, should I go ahead and file? And what's kind of like that break even point on, if I were to live till 80 or 85, like at what point would it have made sense to push it out? And then also, if you're married, should my spouse, do take theirs and then half that goes to the child and then I wait on mine, so all those conversations, Social Security's office is going to be helpful for that, but a financial planner is also going to be helpful for that. And then strategic in how we leave assets behind. We definitely don't want to disinherit. We just want to do proper planning. A lot of times people think, well, I don't want to mess up their benefits, so I'm just going to leave it to the sister that's going to take care of him or her. And really, that's not how we want to do it. Just again, because I talked about earlier, what if that sister got divorced and now the assets got split in half? Or, Maybe the sister was in an accident and part of a lawsuit, and now they're going after her assets personally. Well, there's nothing that earmarks the asset you left behind for your child. So you just want to make sure you do proper planning, and usually that I would say almost always that does not include disinheriting. It's just leaving it in a proper fashion. And then considering able accounts as well, which I'll touch on in a little bit. And another thing that's not in here too, being strategic in how you leave assets behind. So with IRAs, if you leave that into a third-party special needs trust, you can actually still stretch that out over the child's lifetime, where for most other people, they have to withdraw it within 10 years. So it used to be don't leave retirement assets in a third-party trust, leave non-qualified. Well, now that's kind of switched since that new rule where it's okay, actually, maybe we do want to do that so we can stretch it out a little bit. All right. So risk management, the right insurance isn't just coverage, it's the safety net that keeps your family's future secure no matter what life brings, right? So that's what insurance is supposed to be there for, is keeping your family protected. So there's a lot of different insurances you need to consider. Um, Term life insurance is probably the most important if you're just kind of starting out. So that's going to give you the most amount of coverage in the most affordable fashion. Okay, so typically that involved, someone calculating their mortgage and education expenses and income replacement and all that. But I think it takes it a step further where if you are gone, what you really need to think about is what's the cost to replace you, right? Because now it's probably unlikely that your spouse is going to be able to fill both roles. What's probably going to happen is they'll have to hire someone to come in and assist. And what does that cost? So that's really what you need to ask yourself and really sit down and go through what that calculation is. And also, what's the structure of term, So is that going to be a 15-year process, or is this going to be something that for the foreseeable future, for our entire life, we're going to deal with this? So is that a 30-year or longer? So um, that's where term life kind of comes in. Now, permanent life insurance, that's there for the things that you'll always need to think about. Okay, so that would be if you always want to leave a legacy behind or inheritance, that's where that would come in. A second to die, also important. Um, it's not guaranteed that, I talk with some families that, oh, I've heard second to die and that's how we should go. And that's not necessarily the case. Second to die is if both parents passed away, then it pays out. But again, like I talked about, if one parent passes away, you probably still need something to come in to help the living spouse. But second to die is a great option as well. Basically paying once both parents have passed away, sometimes a little less expensive than a permanent policy. Child riders, so you can buy term insurance that have child riders on there where they don't ask underwriting questions, so they get guaranteed coverage. Long-term care riders, where you can access the death benefit early for long-term care expenses, so hopefully you can stay at home. This would be on you personally, not your child. But then also group benefits, home and auto. Basically, just having an expert in all different areas that really take a comprehensive look to how you should protect yourself. And then lastly, I always hit on it takes a village, right? So, yes, the attorney is important and financial advisor and insurance agent, but a benefit specialist, CPA, a trustee if you have a third party trust, advocates, nurses, community supports, all that stuff listed there, and probably and more. Those are all people that are going to be huge to making sure that your child's taken care of. All right, able accounts. So who here? Well, I guess we're all muted. So hopefully everyone here has heard of an ABLE account before. It stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience Act. It's been around since 2014. It's modeled off the 529 plans. It's actually called a 529A plan. So you'll see a lot of similarities with 529's enable accounts, but there are some differences. But that is what they're modeled after, and they're ran by the state treasurer's office. So you actually set up an able account directly through them. So with Kansas, it's savewithable.com. So and then they're tax advantage savings accounts for individuals with disabilities that they can use those funds to spend on really anything that improves their day-to-day life. It's actually probably easier to say what it doesn't cover than what it does cover because it covers just about everything. The big one being housing. All right, so one thing I didn't touch on earlier with a third-party special needs trust, you cannot use that on housing. Well, you can, but you probably shouldn't because it'll cut your SSI by a third. However, if you use an ABLE account instead, that does not cut SSI by a third. So you could do a different strategy where maybe you fund an ABLE and turn around and use that on rent, especially if they're living at home. You could have a rental agreement, which I'll show at the end, charge rent, and then just have the child pay for it. It's a way to maximize the benefit. Um, but yeah, as of September 2025, 223,000 accounts and almost $3 billion in assets. So they're really growing. And we have some really great people on the Kansas side, in particular, that are advocating for able accounts. So that it more to come, it's going to get even better. So one thing that changed, the disability onset age is now 46. It was 26. So that opens the doors for maybe veterans or, just people that were disabled later in life to save with an ABLE account, which is great. And basically, you have to have a medically determinable physical or mental impairment that causes marked and severe functional limitations and is expected to last at least 12 months. If you're like me, I'm like, what? What is what does that mean? So basically, it's a more than moderate to severe disability that impacts the individual's ability to perform basic life activities. And really, you self-certify. So there's actually a list of everything that would automatically qualify. It's like a 3-page long list of various things. So I can send that to Kelly if you'd like, but yeah, it's great to look if you're unsure. But you meet eligibility if you have blindness as defined by Social Security, you're eligible for SSI or SSDI, or you have a disability certification from a licensed physician that certifies the diagnosis. So what the disability is and when it began. So it looks like that. And this is actually on the Able account website. So it's as simple as blank's doctor, so that's your child's doctor, you choose how they qualify and that it happened before age 46, and then the physician signs. So if that's included in their medical records, you're good. That's disability certification for ABLE. All right. So with an ABLE account, you can contribute $20,000 a year. You're allowed to transfer 529 funds into it. It does count as a contribution. So if, let's say, grandma and grandpa set up a 529 account and they were unsure of how everything was, how your child's life was going to progress. And then they found out, later on, probably not going to college, ABLE account makes more sense. And let's say at that time there's 25,000 in the 529, they could transfer 20,000 over and then 5,000 over. I will say this increases by about 1,000 every year, and it's tied to actually the federal tax exclusion amount. So that's what people are allowed to gift per year without having to let the IRS know. So every year that's been going up. So this will probably continue to go up. You can also transfer assets from a special needs trust. And if they're working, they can contribute an additional $15,650 into the ABLE account. And I think in the future, employers will also be able to contribute to the ABLE account, which is fantastic. So contributions, just like 529 account, grow tax-free and maybe tax deductible at the state level, definitely not federal, but that's tied to the same 529 tax deductions. One account allowed per beneficiary. And so if you set one up for your son or daughter, that doesn't mean your parents can now set one up for your son and daughter. They can only have one. And then the individual with the disability can own the account if they have the ability to do so. It's the only account that someone with a disability can own and have it not count as a resource for Medicaid and SSI. So, all right. I know this is a lot, but I think this is the last of the lot slides. So, you're allowed to have 100,000 in the ABLE account before it counts as a resource and impacts SSI. If you have more than 100,000, your SSI will be impacted, but Medicaid will never be impacted. It's just SSI that would be impacted. But really, the average account balance is less than 12,000, so we don't see that very often. Usually people are using it as emergency savings or a way to pay rent, something like that. If you pull funds out and don't use it on qualified expense, it's a 10% non-qualified penalty. Distributions held past the month may be counted as a resource, so definitely be careful with this. If you're using it to pay rent, don't have it pay out on the 30th to then pay rent on the 3rd, right? Because you might run into some issues there. Instead, have the rent due, especially if they're living at home, have the rent due on like the 15th and have the distribution come out early on in the year. And then lastly, Medicaid clawback. Kansas got rid of Medicaid clawback. Missouri still does have it. I guess Kansas has it uh, if Medicaid is used on long-term care, that is still federally required to have a Medicaid clawback. It's not a state requirement, it's federal. So that could still be clawed back, but there are rumblings of Missouri getting away from Medicaid clawback. A lot of states have. So that Medicaid clawback goes to when the account was first opened. So that's the difference between a first party special needs trust and the ABLE account. First party special needs trust goes back all the way from day one of getting Medicaid dollars. The Medicaid clawback on ABLE accounts only go back to the date the ABLE account was opened, so less of a clawback. So here's who can open one and the documentations that you will need, right? So a parent, account owner's birth certificate confirming applicant is the account owner's parent. And then here's what you would need to open an account. Big one is driver's license. That one threw me for a loop the first time I helped someone set it up. So make sure you have that. And then at the bottom there, it says general idea of how you like the funds to be invested. You can change that twice a year, but new contributions anytime. This is the Kansas plan. And Missouri is kind of the same way. Um, so you have risk-based models where you could choose aggressive, moderate, conservative, whatever. Make sure if you're wanting to have it as cash available, that you have it in the money market. Okay, it can't be invested or there's a delay with all that. You want to have it in a money market if you want to use like a debit card or something like that. So there are some nuances with it. So, in summary, useful when saving beyond that $2,000 resource limit. So if a child's working or maybe a relative left $10,000 trying to be nice to the child, you can use an ABLE account for that. So anything under the 20,000, using it on qualified disability expenses, including housing and providing financial independence, right? How often does something come up in life that's more than $2,000? All the time, right? Life happens. That check engine light's ridiculous. So that's where an ABLE account could come in. Likely not the best account for paying for non-QDEs, which again, I said it's easier to say what it doesn't cover, and that would be like gambling, cosmetic procedures, potentially, extreme luxury items, right? So you can't go and buy a Ferrari with it. That may be considered over the top. Larger settlements, so someone trying to leave behind more than 20,000 would probably impact the resource limit. And parents leaving behind inheritances and then avoiding that clawback. Again, in Missouri, it still has that clawback, so you got to be careful of that. So usually you see them in tandem with a third-party special needs trust, or if the child works themselves, that's how they contribute to an ABLE account. And I mentioned a room and board agreement. This is how you would set that up. All right, so if your child is still living with you and you don't want their benefit cut by a third, then you need to charge them fair market value rent, usually $300-400 potentially. So what you would do is you would draw up a rental agreement using this exact form, and then you would put $300 or whatever into their ABLE account, and then they would turn around a couple days later, pull that out, and pay you rent. So it's just a continual cycle, and that keeps it from cutting SSI by a third. I think that's it. Yep. So,
Fantastic.